Mr. President, before I make my prepared remarks, I'd like to note the fact that this is the first time that I am returning to the floor of the Senate since the events of January 6th. It was in the early morning hours of January 7th that we concluded our business and left this chamber to return to our homes for the interim period. We left knowing something terrible had happened in this building on January 6th, but we didn't know the extent of it. As members of the Senate, we were largely protected from this terrorist insurrection which took place in this building. It was about 2:15 p.m. on that afternoon of January 6th when Vice President Pence was presiding over the Senate and most of us were in our seats, that there was a commotion at the chair and the Secret Service came in and literally pulled the Vice President away from that podium and took him out the door. We weren't sure what was happening. It all unfolded quickly. There was an effort to make a quorum call to determine which senators were on the floor. It was interrupted when a representative of the Capitol Police stood where the presiding officer is now seated and instructed us to stay in this room, in this chamber, in the Senate, in our chairs. The staff people and surrounding offices were going to line the walls. This was going to be a safe place, a refuge for whatever was going on. I remember that moment particularly because something happened which is etched in my memory. Two plainclothes officers came down into the well of the Senate and stood there, just a few feet from where I'm standing. One of them had an automatic weapon around his neck. I couldn't imagine what was going on, where in the United States Senate chamber, it was necessary to have that kind of firepower. We stayed here for a few minutes and then we were told leave and leave quickly. We filed out the doors and down the steps and walked across through the tunnel to the Hart building where members of the Senate were safely protected. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to say a word this afternoon, this morning, was the Capitol Police throughout this were heroic. They were overwhelmed by this massive insurrectionist mob. The Capitol Police, as well as the others who joined them, the DC Metropolitan Police, and other law enforcement agencies, which I don't know the names of as I stand here, but I want to thank them all for literally risking their lives for me, for members of the Senate, for our staff and visitors. It wasn't until the next day that we learned, many of us learned, that a Capitol policeman had been killed by this mob. My heart goes out to him and his family, thanking him and all of his colleagues, men and women, who each day get up in the morning, put on their uniforms, and come to this building to protect me and protect the other members of the Senate and the House and all of the staff that work here. We will never be able to repay them in any words for what they sacrificed and risked on January the 6th. But let us never, never demean what happened that day. It was a terrorist attack, homegrown American terrorist attack. I know we're going to spend some time discussing who provoked that attack. The Republican Majority Leader laid the blame, as he should have, at the feet of the President, who invited this group to Washington and then urged them to come march on Capitol Hill. I know we'll go into this matter with more detail at a later point. But the fact of the matter is we endured a great travesty, a great violation of our republic on that day. To think that in this building that we value so much, so many people came in hell-bent on death, kidnapping, and destroying this great chamber and the building around it. It is inconceivable that this happened in America. And we have to come to grips with it in honest, truthful terms and not say, oh, that was yesterday's newspaper, we have to move on. But there's good news. Good news in light of the bad news that I've just recounted. The good news is by this time tomorrow, we will have a new president and a new vice president of the United States. As we begin a new Congress and prepare to welcome President Biden and Vice President Harris, I find myself thinking of the words of a 13th century Persian poet, Rumi. He wrote, "Out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there." For the moment that we are living through, I would edit his words slightly. I would say, out beyond the ideas of right versus left, out beyond the rigid confines of our current polarized politics, there is a field of common good and common purpose. I hope we will all find the courage to meet there, to work together in that place. At another moment of dangerous division in America, Abraham Lincoln prayed that, quote, the better angels of our nature would help us to rediscover our common bond and pull back from the brink of a civil war. Today, the Union, preserved through that war, is battered and divided. For the first time since the Civil War, thousands of federal troops stand guard in our nation's capital to protect it from attack by American citizens. Carpenters and other craftspeople are still hard at work repairing the doors and windows and furniture smashed to bits less than 2 weeks ago by the insurrectionist mob. We must be better than this, or we risk losing our democracy. I believe that beyond the killing field of weaponized politics, there is still a field of shared dreams.